This week, some wild news, a rundown of Esotericon 2024, and Darren Lainers asks the question, is it time to do background checks of the criminal sort and bar all felons? Has the Westgate been open too long? Will this solve any problems? All this and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Hello and welcome back. This is episode number 636. I want to thank our producers, fellows, contributors, and legacy partners of the WCY podcast. Thanks to you, we can make this show and keep it evolving, making it better and better all the time. If you've been a listener for a while and you've thought, how can I help the show? Head on over to WCYpodcast.com, click on support the show, and check out those various options that we have available to you. In the news, you likely have noticed that perhaps there's been some spacing out of the show, and this is really just due to some high-stress family situations that have been occurring. I want to thank those who'd reached out. The support means the world to me, and I thank you all. Presentations coming up, of course, in June, right? We've got June 4th. I'll be up at Middleton Ionic 180 in Middleton, Wisconsin. That is a rescheduled event from a previous time when there was a snowstorm, so I'll be there. I'll also be at Esotericon June 14th and 15th, and of course I want to mention Camp Cornerstone, which will be active August 9th through 11th. If you have ever heard of Camp Masonry, think that, but think Flagstaff, Arizona, and a little bit of that Flagstaff, Arizona Lodge flavor. It's going to be an epic event. I'll be there doing a talk myself over dinner, and it's really looking forward to it. I love camping. I love hanging out and doing outdoorsy stuff, and it only gets better with brothers. So if you're interested, we have all the links on the website, WCYpodcast.com. Click on presentation schedule and just scroll down a little bit. There'll be a couple of flyers that you can click and download, even one that you just click to register for Camp Cornerstone. So check that out. A moment ago, I mentioned Esotericon. For those of you who've never been to Esotericon, what is it? Well, it began in 2019, bringing together like-minded individuals with an interest in the esoteric. That is, the philosophical. Esotericon is, of course, the preeminent conference serving the esoteric-minded individuals, not just Freemasons. This is open to anyone. Topics of previous conferences have included hidden symbolism, Enochian learning to talk with angels and sacred spaces, among others. And they also include special activities such as tarot and natal chart readings. And they're back in 2024 this year in Manassas. They took a year off in 2023, and it's going to be quite the event. You might want to know who's going to be there speaking. Well, how about Dr. David Hill? He'll be doing a talk called The Angel and the Abyss, 2 Measures of Enlightenment in the Western Tradition. Jamie Paul Lamb will be doing Astrological Talismans Practicum and Workshop. So not only will you learn about it, you'll be making, well, a talisman probably in the workshop. It's going to be pretty rad. And then Brother Matt Parker will be doing a presentation called The Corpus Hermeticum and the Heliopolis. Matt Parker, if you know, is a brother from North Carolina, a wonderful esoteric-minded individual, and of course is also a Freemason. So far, all of those that I've mentioned are Freemasons. You'll also hear a premiere, brand new presentation from Brother Jason Richards. He'll be doing Fundamentals of Occult Philosophy. And last but not least, Dr. Justin Sledge. Now, Dr. Justin Sledge is the host of his own YouTube channel, Esoterica, which focuses on the academic study of Western esotericism. His degree in the history of Hermetic philosophy, and he has a PhD in philosophy. His research focuses on the relationship between philosophy and esotericism, especially in metaphysics, and he also collects and deals in antiquarian books in the history of occult. He's worked as an absinthe distiller and a part-time professor, and he lives in Detroit, Michigan with his wife, Rabbi Alana Alpert. He has 2 children, and a pit bull named Mississippi. Now, Dr. Justin Sledge, again, not a Mason, but he is a pretty incredible talent in terms of Western esoteric traditions and knowledge base. So He's going to be one not to miss. You can get your tickets at esotericon.net. They have an in-person ticket and an online access only. So if you want to get online access only, it's only $21.25, all fees included. That's pretty rad. So check that out. Otherwise, you can see the in-person tickets. Conference takes place on Saturday, June 15th. And they'll have their annual social event on Friday before, which will be awesome. Now, I should also mention that those of you who are interested in Esotericon 2024, in-person includes the attendee swag bag. The swag bags are definitely worth it. So check it out, esotericon.net. And if you want to know more, feel free to reach out to me, or you can email ma, as in Mid-Atlantic, esotericon@gmail.com, ma.esotericon@gmail.com. This week, we're back. I'm easing into it. The piece I wanted to read for you this week is called Masonic Soylent Green. Now, it's part one of a series that was written by Worshipful Brother Darren A. Laners. Now, before I get into this, I also want to mention that on June 7th, Darren A. Laners will be doing a premiere presentation for Space Novum Lodge. So if you're up in the area and you want to visit, please do reach out to arrange your visit prior to just showing up. There will be details you'll need, and to get those, please email me at spacenovum2018@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can check the Facebooks, where we'll have a flyer that'll be floating around as well. Brother Darren Laners is doing a premiere presentation, which is aligning with our education theme this year, which is the 12 Legendary Labors of Hercules. His presentation in particular is about Hercules and the Bhagavad Gita. So if you're interested and you're going to be in the area, let me know. Now, back to Darren's latest writing, Masonic Soylent Green. I didn't know where this was going to go either, everyone. This one certainly threw me for a little bit of a loop, but I hope you enjoy just as much as I did. The 1973 film Soylent Green was, at the time of its release, a shocking dystopian and grim depiction of the future. Set in the year 2022, it shows a society of haves and have-nots, in which ecological disaster has caused a greenhouse effect that has rendered most vegetation and livestock extinct. People are forced to live in cities like New York, where the population has swelled to 40 million people. Poverty is rampant, and people are starving. The majority of the population relies on water rationing and a mysterious food known as Soylent to survive. While the upper class live in the gated, guarded luxury apartments, they also are dependent upon Soylent for nourishment. There are 3 brands of Soylent: red, yellow, and green, with green being the most nutritious variety. As the film unfolds, a police detective and a police researcher, Thorne, played by Charlton Heston, and Solomon, or Saul Roth, played by Edward G. Robinson. They're tasked with investigating the death of a board member of the Soylent Corporation. The Soylent Corporation advertises that Soylent Green is made from plankton, but Roth uncovers research that the oceans are no longer capable of producing plankton, and the truth is uncovered that Soylent Green is made from human bodies. Roth is so distraught that he goes to a government clinic to seek assisted suicide. Thorne rushes to try to convince Roth to stop, but he arrives only with enough time for Roth to reveal the truth to Thorne, that Soylent Green is made from people. Thorne secretly boards a truck transporting bodies to a waste processing plant where he witnesses corpses being turned into Soylent Green. Of course, the Soylent Corporation does not want the truth to be revealed, and a gunfight with Soylent thugs occurs. Thorne is able to defeat his attackers, but is seriously wounded in the fight. As he's taken away by paramedics, he urges his police chief to spread the truth that Soylent Green is people. By this point, you're probably asking yourself, WTF does this have to do with Freemasonry, other than one of the characters being named Solomon? Actually, it has a lot to do with Freemasonry. You see, Freemasonry is like Soylent Green. It's also made up of people, and it comes in different flavors, in the form of appendant bodies. But that answer isn't adequate, is it? While accurate, The fact of the matter is that Freemasonry is like Soylent Green because Freemasonry has a habit of unsuspectingly eating itself. Allow me to explain. Picture a man who has petitioned a Masonic lodge. We don't have to determine the lodge's pretend location, because what I'm going to describe is symptomatic of many lodges across the United States and maybe internationally. It also doesn't matter how he contacted the lodge to petition. Maybe he's an internet inquiry, or he has just shown up, or he's an invitation to petition. All that matters is that we have a man who has petitioned a Masonic lodge. His petition is read, and then the worshipful master assigns an investigation committee to investigate the candidate. A cursory investigation is done, asking basically if there is a belief in a supreme being, and if they have any felonies. The man is voted upon and he's eventually initiated, passed, and raised. Let's imagine the below scenario. The man committed a crime in the past, or crimes. Because the lodge did no due diligence, the sex offender gets in close contact with the lodge's members' wives and children, the girls of Rainbow Girls or Job's Daughters, the boys of Demolay, the women of OES, or the Order of Amaranth. The unimaginable happens. A child molested, a woman raped. The lodge and the Grand Lodge are sued in civil court. If the sex offender had joined the shrine or other appendant bodies, they're sued as well. There's a massive settlement awarded to the plaintiff. The amount is much larger than any insurance policy the Grand Lodge has to cover such things. As such, the Grand Lodge is forced into bankruptcy, as well as its lodges, who are incorporated under the Grand Lodge and possibly the appendant body as well. Conspiracy theories that believe Freemasons are evil in the most hideous ways are confirmed. Social media backlash towards Freemasonry begins when a conspiracy TikTok gets millions of views. Soon, a massive global anti-Masonic backlash occurs. A trend from TikTok to cancel Freemasonry gains steam. Freemasonry experiences a sharp decline in membership, mostly from men demanding to disassociate themselves from the fraternity. And due to the backlash, online inquiries are only coming in so that rabid anti-Masons can harass the remaining fraternity members when they follow up on the inquiry. Unlike the Morgan affair, Freemasonry does not recover from the anti-Masonic backlash. While potentially fantastical, I do think that all, or some of the above, is possible. We have left the West Gate open for far too many years, and we must protect Freemasonry not only from without, but also from within. It's just a matter of time before we have a member do something that massively harms the fraternity. If a Mason in most jurisdictions is automatically expelled upon committing a felony, shouldn't we also make sure that we exclude from membership all felons? Well, I once wrote an article on this subject for the blog only to think that I was wrong about the first article in a subsequent article. I have come to realize that Freemasonry needs to be protected at all costs. We should not allow men with a prior felony conviction to join our fraternity. And we should also not allow members with prior felony convictions to remain in the fraternity, nor ones with any misdemeanor sexual offense. To accomplish this, we should require background checks for all candidates for Freemasonry, but also a one-time criminal background check for all current members to enforce the above. In doing such, we are separating the wheat from the chaff. Those who have something to hide will be the ones who protest. Those who are innocent will not. Not every man deserves to be a Mason, and we must decide that what matters more is the quality of our membership over the quantity of our membership. We can ill afford to continue to tempt fate. Do you think we can afford to be wrong? Darren A. Laners. The thing that stuck out to me in this piece is the imaginative scenario, because while Darren thinks it to be fantastical, well, it's already happened in other jurisdictions that I know for sure, and, well, the only reason it didn't make huge news is because, well, I'm sure there were all kinds of legal, lawyer, crazy, pay lots of fees to hide it all kind of thing going on. And while I do not 100% agree with Darren when he says that we should bar all felons, personally, I know several men who are great Masons who have had a felony, who have turned their life around. Granted, none of them are murder or sexual in nature in terms of their crimes. I think I would absolutely back a universal law that required all petitioners for membership to get a criminal background check. Further, I would require the same of any member looking to gain plural membership with another lodge. Why? Well, what if something happened in their record between the time that they entered the craft and the time of their plural petition, especially if in another state? There's a large disconnect when it comes to members and how they believe the Grand Lodge vets people. The Grand Lodge, at least in Illinois, does no checking of the petitioner or the candidate. When you send in a petition and you put them into the Grand Lodge system, Maury for us, the Grand Lodge will approve the petition or reject it. But that approval or rejection is not based on any investigation or background check or anything. It's simply checking over to make sure the paperwork is right and the situation in which perhaps there are jurisdictional waivers and things that have to happen. It's nothing to do with criminal backgrounds or the type of person somebody is at all. So that's number one. Number two is that if a brother gets a felony, the Grand Lodge doesn't know that. They don't run periodic checks. They don't have your social security number, so they can't run a true background check, criminal background check. The only way a brother is to be removed from the fraternity when he gets a felony is because a brother has to report it and take it up the line. I think what Darren is offering here is a way to not have to deal with any of that and just bar them outright, as I believe they do in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania just says, oh, you got a petition, here's the social security number, they check it, do a criminal background check. If it has a felony, they send a letter, I think, just out to the candidate saying, sorry, you can't become a Mason. If they pass that, then it goes to the lodge for investigation, I believe. So it's a lot to think about, especially now that many Grand Lodges are starting to see the active and concerned Mason. Men are joining who hold the fraternity to a high regard and are taking an active interest in the administration of the craft, which necessarily means they're looking at the laws, the Constitution, the bylaws. They're thinking about changes that need to be made, so on and so forth. And I think that's a good thing. Anyway, that's all for this week. We'll be back next week with even more. One more time, I want to thank our producers, fellows, contributors, and legacy partners for all of your assistance in bringing the WCY podcast to the world. Remember to check out the presentation schedule. If you're curious on how to support the show, check out the Support the Show tab on WCYpodcast.com. Make sure you check out Worshipful Brother Darren A. Lehner's coming out to June 7th, the presentation he'll be doing at Space Novum. Or if you can't wait for that, perhaps you'll see him at the Illinois Lodge of Research Symposium happening in June, I believe. And you can catch him all the time either at the Midnight Freemasons or on his podcast that he does with Worshipful Brother, I should say illustrious brother, Gregory Knott, which is called Meet, Act, and Part. We'll put a link in the show notes so you can check it out. Until next week, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.
WCY Media.
This is